So China banned Bitcoin again, and 99% of the time I would say ignore that. It's been a ridiculous headline 100 times during previous bull runs. It's always FUD. You can always ignore it. They ban mining, then they unban it. They ban trading, then they unban it. This time it might actually be different. And I have some evidence to back it up. Chinese miners have been selling record amounts of Bitcoin. Have a look at this chart. It shows just how high it is. It's the highest since March 2020. And since this is such a complex topic, there's a lot to cover here. It's deep, it's nuanced. I wanted to bring on Nic Carter so I could understand what the hell is happening with China. Is it actually different? Why are miners selling so much Bitcoin? Are they going to start selling even more Bitcoin, right? Is this something to actually worry about? And the reason I'm doing this, it's not to scare you out of your coins, right? I don't want to share FUD. I don't want to just share another China bans Bitcoin article. The reason I'm sharing it is so you actually are informed about the different market effects at play, because of all the smart investors I talk to, everyone's focused on this. And if it turns out to not be as bad as some people think, if the trading crackdown and miners moving out of China, if that turns out not to be as bad as people think, obviously we're due for a resume bull market. But if it turns out to be worse and it continues, well, you know, we all got reminded how bad that can get. When Bitcoin sells off, everything else will sell off. So I'm bringing on Nic Carter. He's an expert on Bitcoin, really all things Bitcoin. Every time I have a question, I go to Nick. He always has an answer. We're going to cover it on today's show so you guys are informed. You don't have to overreact to the news articles, and hopefully that helps you turn a profit. Remember to subscribe so you guys catch these. I'm going to have on more funds, analysts, investors, traders talking about what's happening in this market, and also with the like button if you've been enjoying them. I want to get to 250 likes. Let's see if we can do that. And let me know what you guys think about this recent China ban. Is it for real, or is it going to turn out like all the previous China bans Bitcoin? All right, let's get to the show with Nick, and let's make sense of what the hell is happening in China. Enjoy this one, guys.
From here, and that's up.
$100 million.
Nick, honestly, I'm surprised that you're not wearing. You did a poll the other day asking your followers what you should wear in all your interviews because they weren't happy with what you were wearing. I thought you were going to show up today looking like you look in your avatar. What happened? That was the best selection in the poll.
With a leather jacket.
Leather jacket, holding it over your shoulder every single time.
I can go get it if you want. You want me to go get it?
It's all right. We can just talk about we can talk about China banning Bitcoin instead. It's something that everyone's familiar with. I've seen it a million times. I kind of just laugh it off. I know people that are new here, it's still like a scary thing. Apparently, though, this one has more teeth. Why is it so hard to always figure out what China's doing? Like, don't they have like a CNN or a CNBC where the announcement is made? Like, why can no one figure it out?
Yeah, this time is different. Trademark TM. Yeah. Apparently it is though. Unfortunately, you know, we have to rely on conduits that like speak Mandarin and are like really good cross-cultural and, you know, deeply embedded into Bitcoin culture that people trust out here, and then, you know, have good sources on the ground, which is like a very small handful of people.
Sure.
So I would like Mustafa Ilham has been a really reliable source on this. Dovey has done a really good job communicating it, in my opinion. So I do feel, and I've also talked to some other miners on the ground in China, so I'm pretty confident in my like current assessment. But of course, like as I said, like on my YouTube video, like I am also dealing with a very noisy signal here. So but yeah, I mean, everything that I've seen suggests that this is like a really material change. And, you know, the way like policy apparently works in China is you will get an announcement. So it was Friday afternoon was this first announcement from the vice premier, I believe. And then over the next week, like the actual details, like, you know, percolate out, which is like very different from the way policy is made in the US, where like you have a comment period, like the FinCEN thing, for instance. You know, we know what the policy will entail, lengthy comment period. After a lot of deliberation, it's implemented, and then it's like fixed. Apparently in China, it's much more iterative, much more like experimental, hypothesis driven, and then like there's still uncertainty as to like how it gets implemented.
Yeah. When I hear this, I mean, partially it's because I've seen it so many times, so you shrug it off, but also, like, you know, Parker Lewis has some incredible writings on if one country bans Bitcoin, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, you know, the rest of the world will benefit, or another country will be more welcoming, and that country will benefit versus the country who tries to ban it. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, for all the rumors that go around that say China controls Bitcoin, it's a state-sponsored thing, they want to control Bitcoin, it seems the exact opposite. They want to ban Bitcoin. Like, which side is right? Because there's Bitcoin haters that say China controls Bitcoin, and there's Bitcoin haters that say China's going to ban Bitcoin and Bitcoin's over. Which one is closer to the truth, or neither of them closer to the truth?
Yeah, the question and the framing I think you should opt here is like, how would China behave if they did truly want to co-opt and commandeer Bitcoin? And, leaving aside the practicalities or likelihood of that happening, what would they do if they wanted to actually capture Bitcoin? In my view, what they would do would be aggressively subsidize mining so that as much hash rate were to enter their borders as possible,
Right.
and then nationalize those miners and, try and promote policy through their newfound ownership of those miners, whether or not that would be successful or not. That's what I would do if I were China and I decided that I wanted to capture Bitcoin. Now, what are they actually doing? It appears that they are discouraging miners from operating in China. They're doing the precise opposite, as you say. There's a separate phenomenon, which is the provinces themselves are taking action too. So, China's like kind of this federal system. In fact, in some ways, it's actually more decentralized in its governance than the U.S. is.
Mm-hmm.
So in Inner Mongolia, which is not the country of Mongolia, but it's a province in China in the north, they are also separately aggressively pursuing miners and shutting them down. We got new guidance on that today to clarify the prior guidance they had released. So we have a central government crackdown on mining, which I'm actually interpreting as potentially a bit of a power struggle between the periphery and the core, between the provinces and the CCP. And then separately, you also have individual provinces. Inner Mongolia, one of the biggest 4 provinces for mining in China, also aggressively pursuing mining and forcing it out. All of that is to say, if they wanted to capture Bitcoin, they're doing the opposite of what I'd expect. It looks to me like they are just simply fed up of Bitcoin mining occurring within China. I also have other hypotheses for why that might be. One of them relates to this energy transition they're going through. But yeah, they're doing the opposite of what I'd expect if they wanted to capture it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. The reason it matters for investors, obviously, for people that are listening and saying, well, I don't care if some country that I can't even put on a map, I don't know where. You could give me a map. It would take me hours to find Inner Mongolia. But I imagine, I imagine there's people listening and saying, I don't care what Inner Mongolia does in regards with their mining regulations. But it matters because if this one does have teeth, right, those miners that either have to relocate or shut down business will be selling their coins. And you can look on chain and see whether or not that's happening. And you did do that in the past week. And it looks like the amount of Bitcoin that miners are selling or moving has gone up dramatically. What's going on with that? Is that a normal standard deviation, or is this kind of out of the norm? And you're saying Chinese miners are dumping a lot of Bitcoin.
We saw 3 things specifically, and I want to credit specifically Kareem Helmi, who actually developed these metrics and these heuristics, who's now at Galaxy. Huge asset to their team over there. He's probably one of the foremost experts on-chain analytics, especially as it pertains to mining worldwide. I mean, he developed this heuristic that allows you to determine what kind of hardware is active on the Bitcoin network by looking at the distribution of randomness and the nonces. I mean, like, unbelievable stuff. Like this, the science of like on-chain analytics is getting like way ahead of my ability to comprehend it.
Yeah,
which is like kind of funny.
I like the simple the charts you share. I can keep up with. When we start talking about looking at randomness and nonsense, I'm going to leave all that to him.
So some of the suite of metrics that Kareem developed. I mean, so we looked at you have to look one hop beyond the mining output, because like coins get mined, they go into pools, and then they get distributed to miners, right? So you have to add a little bit of complexity there, but basically what we saw was a massive outflow from the stock of coins held by presumed miners. And again, it's probabilistic, but we can have pretty good confidence that miners did have big outflows on kind of, about a week ago now, a few days ago, over the last week or so. Some of it hit exchanges, so there were, somewhat elevated inflows into exchanges, but for the most part, it looked like those miners were actually trying to avoid exchanges because there is this parallel fear around exchange crackdowns too. Mm-hmm. And so, that was in the guidance as well. It was exchange and mining. And we know that the OKEX CEO and the Huobi leadership have been harassed by the Chinese state over the last few months. They've been detained for like meaningful periods of time. And when those detainments happen, if you look on chain, you see outflows from the wallets of users of those exchanges.
One
right?
thing I want to add to that, I don't want to cut you off, but I actually saw this was announced like 30 minutes ago. I think Bybit is now banning Chinese accounts with a Chinese phone number. So I think it's probably going to start happening to a lot more exchanges.
Wow. I would expect to see coins leaving Chinese exchanges en masse. I'll be looking at it right after we get off.
Yeah.
But so what we did see was miners dancing around the exchanges, going direct, going OTC. Presumably these were sales. You also see these outflows coinciding with prior sell-offs, March 2020 actually, that sell-off in summer 2019. So it seems to be a very strong signal, frankly, because people think miners just constantly sell their coins. That's totally not true. They hold a stock of accumulated coins. Some miners are like Bitcoin denominated institutions. They want to hold their Bitcoin. What was the other thing that we saw? We saw, significant outflows from exchanges to miner wallets. So it looks like they were just like kind of redeeming their positions at exchanges and going like fully sovereign kind of thing. So they're like battening down the hatches. They're getting some liquidity. They're probably getting some RMB so that they can pay their bills for a little bit. They're preparing to potentially migrate. That all costs like fiat liquidity. So it doesn't surprise me that they sold off.
And that's a serious pressure. I'm not sure what the amount of coins. I mean, we can calculate, look at how many new coins are minted every single day for miners, and calculate out that selling pressure. But that could have a pretty big effect if this continues in terms of how many coins miners are selling versus what they normally do, which is a good portion of them like to hold their coins. Obviously, some are selling to kind of pay for operations, but that could have a really big effect. The other announcement, Nick, that I thought when I saw it was undeniably bullish. So we have this kind of China fear. We have what's actually happening, which is more miners are now selling their coins. Those are both downward pressure for Bitcoin. I saw a piece of news that in my head, my smooth brain, I thought, this is undeniably bullish. This changes the narrative, and now we have a positive catalyst. Immediately after on Twitter, people are arguing and fighting left and right and saying, how dare you support that? This is bearish now. And it was a tweet that came out from Elon Musk. He said, this looks promising. Elon Musk has been a Bitcoin hater, saying that mining is destroying the planet. Now, all of a sudden, he's saying, this is promising. And Michael Saylor hosted a meeting with Elon Musk, and he said, I'm going to get together Elon Musk, 8 other funds and 8 other giant mining corporations. We're going to get in a closed-door meeting, and we're going to figure out how to make mining more friendly for the environment. And in my head, I'm like, this is great. We're changing the narrative. It's not bad for the planet. More mining is going to come to the U.S. Why am I wrong there? Why are Bitcoiners hating on this and saying, no, this is bad for Bitcoin? Do we just like to hate each other? Like, is there just a lot of pent-up hate? What's going on here?
I mean, yeah, people are like in a pretty sour mood as it pertains to Elon. I don't blame them. I've certainly felt aggrieved by Elon, like toying with us a little bit, treating us as his plaything. I'm sure he enjoys, the feeling of being able to move markets, but like that's a lot of people's livelihood. So maybe we can sort of keep that to a minimum from now on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with the framing, like if you are creating any kind of organization in the Bitcoin space, you need to consult with like longtime Bitcoiners who will help you with your like optics, basically, because frankly, and I am friends with a lot of the people that are represented in this council, I guess is what they were calling it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of these people. I wasn't there, to be clear. I found out about it.
You weren't in the closed door meeting.
I know, it's unbelievable. It's like what's going on here? Where's my invite to the shadowy council? Yeah. But so I'm sympathetic to a lot of these firms. Some of them, varying opinions. Like Marathon, I wouldn't say I'm like a big fan of what they do, to be frank. But leaving that aside, they probably should have done a little bit more thinking in terms of the optics. Everyone's mad at Elon, so they don't really want him involved in some Bitcoin advocacy organization. It was a little tone deaf to frame it as a council. That kind of suggests it's like a membership organization that's going to have rules for its members. And that's just not the right framing. What they're really proposing to do is, collectively agree to disclose the nature of their energy mix, which is a very positive and good thing because the facts on the ground are good. I can tell you that for sure. Like I've been looking into it for a long time now, trying to ascertain what's the energy mix of American miners, Chinese miners, etc. It's good. Like Bitcoin is a greener fundamentally commodity than like the generic default energy grid in the US, for instance, right? So a lot of the critique is grounded in the opacity of Bitcoin's energy footprint. Like because we don't have good numbers on this, people just reflexively default to, well, Bitcoin presumably has the same carbon intensity as like the Chinese grid, which is not true at all. It's not true within China, but it's just generally not true. So if we can expose these facts, I think disclosure is a great bottom-up, self-regulatory thing. It's not imposing any demands. It's not trying to change Bitcoin consensus. It doesn't even necessarily require a membership organization like this or a council. I think there will be many nonprofits and like advocacy organizations that spring up around this exact topic. There will be more. I can guarantee you it. I was going to advocate for this anyway, like regardless of a council or an accord or anything like that. I went on Bloomberg and I said it like a week ago before this news broke. Miners should disclose their energy mix. So like this is a good idea regardless of who is doing it. People are fixating on the how and the who, but they should really focus on like the substance of the idea.
So I wasn't entirely off base when I said, I mean, this is a positive thing. It's a good to get, even if it's an initiative, I don't care if it comes from 10,000 decentralized people or 10 people in a closed room, as long as they're not controlling. Because I got replies that said, this is another small group that's going to try to control Bitcoin. They're going to, concentrate the mining. Is this actually a positive force that kind of combats what's happening negatively in China? I think it is.
So, I mean, like the hash rate we know is leaving China regardless. It was already leaving China, by the way, before even, this newest crackdown. Like the Inner Mongolia thing was happening independently. That was like a good chunk of Chinese coal-powered Chinese hash rate. We know that the ASICs are migrating west. If you look at who has bought up the allocations at WhatsMiner and Bitmain, Western capital. If you look at all of the firms getting funded in public or private markets, Western North American firms. Like we knew hash rate was migrating westward. What this disclosure will do will, first of all, evidence the growing, North American hash rate share, which is obviously a good thing in my view. And it'll also encourage the entities that are doing the disclosure to pursue greener sources of carbon, because like how humiliating would it be to be like, yeah, look, we're 5% of the Bitcoin network and we're good old Montana coal. Like that would be like catastrophic.
Yeah.
So like and a lot of these are publicly traded companies now. So it's kind of in their disclosures anyway. If you look, that's the other thing. Half of them are already doing this. It's just nobody bothers to look. No one, is like actually investigating them. So like it was common to already disclose your energy mix, but now it'll just be standardized.
So the biggest takeaway for me, like for investors and traders that are only focused on number go up news, they want to understand what's going to cause number to go back up. I think that the most important thing I'm going to be watching is whether or not miners in China continue this trend of more coins they're offloading. I think that's something you have to focus on. And then I think we should also watch out for Nic Carter's closed door meeting that he's also proposing to see what happens. But what else should we be watching? What else are you going to be watching to see how this develops?
I'm going to invite everyone to my meeting if and when I have it. I'll host it on Clubhouse. So maybe it'll be closed to Android users. But yeah, like Catalyst. So like I believe a lot of miners already de-risked, and there's like a lot of potential upside volatility here if the action out of China proves to be less punitive and less onerous than we thought, right? So right now, the market is sort of pricing in a worst case scenario because like we got very credible reports that like this is very bad. If it is less bad than we thought, that's going to be pretty good overall. In particular, like the mining thing, that's a long-term secular trend that's going to happen anyway. It would be immensely good if hash rate left China for sure. So like keep an eye on that. But the really key near-term catalyst I'm looking at is like the exchange crackdowns. I mean, and there's like a lot of left tail risk there for sure. OKX, Huobi, those are enormous institutions. They've got hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins in their vaults.
Yeah.
An unwind there, a crackdown on the OTC RMB, Tether RMB Bitcoin markets in China, that would be like a significant, like downside event in crypto. We don't know exactly what is being planned there right now. So the mining stuff, like I would say, most of the downside has already like been priced in. People are, rightfully nervous about that. I generally believe it's a fundamentally bullish event. It's going to help restore and reset a lot of these narratives that we see in the press out here. The exchange infrastructure is like what I'm monitoring really closely to see what happens.
Okay, cool. That's a really good summary. So watching out in the exchange outflows, watching exchange crackdowns, and for everyone listening, we can just keep hating Elon Musk. We'll keep hating other Bitcoiners. That's what we do best. And we'll watch out for that positive upside volatility. I don't think anyone would hate that, some upside volatility.
Yeah, we could use a break now. I want to see this block clock like tick up for once. It's been going the wrong way for months now.
I'm not going to buy one until price starts going up again. But Nick, I appreciate. Go ahead.
I think I bought mine at like the
at
precise
the top
pick. Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah. I would love to see if they made that public as an on-chain metric. Block clock sales
purchase
correlated with price. It has to be at previous cycle tops.
Top signal.
Because those things are expensive too. Well, Nick, I appreciate you coming on, making a donation to the block clock team. And yeah, man, I'll keep my eyes open for your closed door meeting. We all love those, and we're all looking for a break here. So appreciate you coming on. Let you get back to your TV appearances. You've been making the rounds. Thanks for making time for me.
Always a pleasure, Luke. Luke, I prioritize you over any TV news station. You come first. So
can you say that next time you're on Bloomberg and speaking with Joe and them? You're like, hold on, Joe. I have to.
I was having a conversation with my good friend Luke Martin, Venture Coinist. Follow him on Twitter.
Links down below. Swipe up. I don't know. I don't know what they say nowadays, but that has to be included. Nick, appreciate you coming on, man. I'll let you get on with your day, and we'll chat soon.
All right. Take care.